My name is Jake Thompson, and I'm a former Marine. My story isn't like the ones you often hear. I'm not here to talk about heroism or glorious battles. Mine is a story of change, of a spiritual awakening that turned everything I believed upside down. It was 2011, and I was in a remote area of East Africa. Our mission was simple: to monitor and counter the activity of local terrorist groups. The sun beat down mercilessly, and the land was dry and inhospitable. Every day the tension was palpable. We knew an attack could happen at any moment. My team was made up of tough men, veterans of multiple missions. We weren't new to these situations, but that day something was different. There was an eerie silence in the air, as if the very earth was holding its breath, waiting for something. The sun was high in the sky when our convoy began to pass through that desolate village. The heat was oppressive, with a layer of dust rising with every step of our boots. The landscape around us was bleak: ruined houses, bullet-riddled walls, and deserted streets. A silent reminder of a conflict that had reduced the land to rubble. I could feel the weight of my armor on my back, the sweat running down my forehead, and the tension growing with each step. It was a feeling I knew well, that unnatural silence before a storm. Something was wrong, and every fiber of my being was on high alert. Suddenly, the world exploded. There's no other way to describe it. Gunfire echoed around us like thunder, and the air filled with frantic shouts and commands. Bullets whizzed over our heads, and I could hear their deadly hiss as they sliced through the air. The chaos was total. I was trained for situations like this, but no training can truly prepare you for the pure, primal terror you feel when your life is hanging by a thread. I ducked behind an old brick wall, trying to locate the source of the enemy fire, but it was hard to tell where the shots were coming from. We were surrounded. "Jake, get down!" shouted one of my comrades, but it was too late. I felt a sharp impact in my chest, like a hammer hitting me with full force. The world around me slowed down. The pain surged like a tidal wave, and I collapsed to the ground, my vision blurring. I tried to breathe, but the air wouldn't come. My chest was on fire, and I could feel the blood flowing hot under my armor. The sounds around me became muffled, like I was sinking underwater. The ground beneath me was hard and dusty, but I didn't have the strength to move. Then another shot, and another. Each one was a wave of pain that overwhelmed me, and I felt my strength draining away. I remember the taste of blood in my mouth, the cold creeping into my body, and the realization that I was dying. The last thing I saw was the sky above me, a clear blue, almost serene, in contrast to the chaos raging on the ground. Then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in a place I could never have imagined, even in my worst nightmares. I was surrounded by the deepest darkness, a darkness that seemed alive, pulsating. The ground beneath me was dry and dusty, but strangely warm, as if it had been scorched by fire for millennia. The air was thick and suffocating, filled with an acrid smell of sulfur and burning flesh. In front of me loomed a hellish landscape. Flames as tall as skyscrapers licked a starless sky, a sky that seemed more like an inverted abyss than a celestial vault. Everywhere I looked, I saw rivers of molten lava flowing like blood in the veins of that cursed place, faintly illuminating, twisted figures writhing and twisting in torment. The screams were what hit me the most, screams of pain, terror, pure agony, echoing in every direction, reverberating in that vast desert of damnation. They weren't just screams of physical pain, but the cries of desperate souls trapped in eternal torment. I could hear them as if they were right next to me, even though I couldn't see anyone nearby. As I looked around, trying to understand where I was, terror began to take hold of me. This wasn't just a nightmare. It was something far worse. Everything in that place seemed to be alive, animated by an evil force that seeped under the skin, penetrating the bones. I could feel the evil around me, a palpable energy that fed on fear, suffering, and despair. At that moment, I realized I was in hell. I moved slowly, my legs heavy as lead, and every step I took seemed to require superhuman effort. The ground crumbled beneath my feet, and the heat from the flames licked my skin, but without burning it. It was like being immersed in a scorching furnace, but without the mercy of death. As I advanced, a figure emerged from the shadows, a dark silhouette against the glow of the flames. At first, I couldn't recognize it, but as it got closer, my heart stopped. It was Colonel Mark Davis, my old commander. His face, once determined and strong, was now twisted in an expression of agony and despair. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes were empty, devoid of any spark of life. His hands trembled slightly, as if tormented by an invisible pain. He stopped a few steps from me, and our eyes met. "Jake," he said in a low voice, almost a whisper, but it carried immense weight. "The war we're fighting, it's not for freedom. It's not for good. It's a war willed by the devil himself." His words hit my conscience like a punch straight to the heart. I felt like a veil had been torn away, revealing a horrible truth I had ignored for too long. "I'm here," he continued, his voice cracked with pain, "because I blindly followed orders. I believed in the lie that we were doing good, but the truth is we were fighting for evil. The real enemy wasn't in front of us, but behind us, hidden in the shadows, manipulating everything." Every word he spoke seemed to cut deeper into my soul. "Jake, if we continue to fight these senseless wars, commanders like me will meet the same fate. These conflicts must end. The real enemy is the hatred, the lust for power that fuels these wars. It's the devil who guides these actions, and if we don't stop this cycle, we're all doomed." Terror gripped me, but along with the terror, a new awareness began to dawn within me. Everything I had believed in, everything I had fought for, suddenly seemed like a lie, a manipulation orchestrated by forces I couldn't understand. The presence of Colonel Davis, a figure I had respected and followed blindly, had become a living warning of what it meant to be seduced by evil. Hell wasn't just a place of physical suffering, but a place of spiritual torment. I could feel the souls around me, not only tortured but trapped in a cycle of regrets and guilt they could never resolve. Every scream, every lament that echoed in that cursed place was laden with eternal despair and awareness that there was no way out. "Jake," continued the colonel with a sadness that seemed to come from a deep and irreparable place, "there's no redemption for those who continue down this path. I saw too late what I was really serving. The wars we fight, the flags we march under, they're all pieces of a larger game, a game that only serves chaos and destruction. Every life lost, every order followed without question, only brings us closer to this abyss." His words pierced my heart like arrows. The blind faith I had placed in the ideal of fighting for a just cause was dismantled piece by piece. I was beginning to see things as they really were. War wasn't just a battle between nations or ideologies, but a spiritual battle between good and evil. And too often, the lines between the two were blurred, almost non-existent. "Jake," the colonel called out to me again, his voice a desperate whisper, "you have to make the right choice. Don't continue down this road. Abandon the war. Find a way to break the cycle. If you continue, you'll join us in this torment." I felt a crushing weight on my soul. It seemed that every choice I had made, every order I had followed, had led me to this point. I couldn't afford to ignore what he was saying. I had to do something. I had to change, but I didn't know how. The colonel's figure began to fade, as if being sucked into the surrounding darkness. The last thing I saw were his eyes, full of pain and regret, staring at me, imploring me not to follow his same fate. I suddenly felt myself being pulled away from that darkness. The hell around me vanished, replaced by a blinding light. It wasn't the warm, comforting light I might have expected, but a cold, clinical light. I opened my eyes and found myself in a hospital room, surrounded by machines, monitoring my every breath, every heartbeat. Reality hit me like a punch to the gut. I was alive. But the relief I should have felt was overshadowed by the vivid memory of the hell I had just left. I could still hear the screams, see the flames, feel the weight of Colonel Davis's words. A nurse entered the room, surprised to see me awake. "You were lucky," she said with a kind smile, but I knew there had been no luck in what had happened to me. Something, or someone, had allowed me to return for a reason, and that reason couldn't be ignored. The following days were a whirlwind of medical visits, tests, and questions I didn't know how to answer. Every night, when I closed my eyes, I returned to that hell, saw Colonel Davis again, heard his words echoing in my mind. The war wasn't what I thought. The enemy wasn't who we had been told. I could no longer ignore what I had seen. I could no longer ignore the weight of the choices I had made, the lives I had helped destroy. I knew I had to do something, that I had to radically change my life. After months of physical recovery, during which my body healed from the wounds I had sustained, my real recovery began, the spiritual one. My faith, which had been almost non-existent before, turned into something profound. I began to seek answers in the scriptures, in the sacred texts of different religions, searching for meaning in what I had experienced. Every word from Colonel Davis continued to resonate in my mind. War was a trap, a manifestation of evil, and I could no longer be part of that destructive cycle. I could no longer be complicit in that infernal machine. In the end, I made a difficult but necessary decision. I left the Marine Corps. I knew I could no longer wear that uniform with the same conviction as before. I could no longer fight in the name of a cause I now saw as deeply corrupted. Leaving the military meant leaving much of my identity behind. The Marines had been my family, my purpose for years. But I knew I had to find a new path. One that aligned with what I had discovered. One that wouldn't lead me to that hell I had seen. I returned home, but I didn't feel the same. I was different, and the world around me seemed changed. Friends, family, everyone seemed unaware of the truths I had discovered. It was difficult to explain what I had gone through, and most people didn't want to listen. I began to live a simple life, far from the conflicts and lies I had once embraced. Finding a normal job wasn't easy, but I found peace in small things. Working the land, helping neighbors, participating in community activities. These were the things that kept me grounded, that made me feel human again. Faith became the pillar on which I built my new existence. Every day, I dedicated time to prayer, to meditation, trying to keep alive the connection with something greater than myself. And every day, I tried to live in a way that avoided fueling hatred, anger, and all the forces that had created the hell I had seen. I knew I couldn't change the world on my own, but I could change myself. I could do my part to break the cycle, to prevent other souls from being dragged into that place of torment. Sometimes, I think back to Colonel Davis and wonder if he found peace. I want to believe that in some way, his words helped him find a way out too, that his sacrifice wasn't in vain. This is my story. I don't know if anyone will believe it, but for me it's the truth. And now that I've shared it, I hope it can serve as a warning to all those who believe that war is the solution. The real enemy is within us, and only through peace can we defeat it. From that day on, my life changed completely. I am a man of faith, and I no longer need to fight to find my place in the world. Now I live with the awareness that the real battle is fought in the heart of each of us. And with that, my story ends. But my new life has just begun. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to listen to my story. It means a lot to me knowing that you followed this journey to the end. If what you've heard has touched you in any way, I encourage you to share it with those who might find comfort or inspiration in these words. Even a simple amen in the comments would be a valuable gesture to support this channel and spread the message. Once again, thank you so much, and may peace and awareness always be with you.